Before we can start understanding how to interact with people, we first need to understand that there are three distinct types of humans, and they have very, very different abilities and outlooks. First, we have neurotypicals. They are the most common type of human. We have another category, and there is very little consensus, either clinical or otherwise, on how to label them. They're called sometimes psychopaths. The current clinical term is antisocial personality disorder. Most of you will know them as jerks. I will call them in this series sociopaths. And finally, we have people on the autism spectrum. So before we can start understanding these three categories of people, we need to understand three basic human functions, neurological functions, that are distributed differently among the different types. First, we have the ability to identify emotions. For neurotypicals and sociopaths, this is something that is done automatically. It's something that's built into the nervous system. For people on the autism spectrum, however, it will usually be something that needs to be learned. The second ability is the ability to decode social cues. This is something, again, that is hardwired into the nervous system of neurotypicals and of sociopaths. For people on the autism spectrum, however, learning to decode and understand social cues is something that has to be acquired as a skill. The third and last of these abilities is empathy. The ability to experience and identify with emotions of other people. Now, in this case, neurotypicals have this ability hardwired. People on the autism spectrum also have this ability. Sociopaths, however, have a more or less severe impairment of this capacity. Now, obviously, these categories are not always clear-cut. Autism, for instance, is a spectrum, and people on the spectrum will exhibit varying levels of the abilities and of the impairments that are associated with the condition. And the same is true with sociopaths. It's also known that stress, for instance, will impair empathy even in neurotypical people. Higher levels of stress will make empathy less present, and the empathy will return when the stressors are removed. Now, let's start looking at how these three different types of humans behave. Neurotypicals have all three of these functions built into their brains. They will be using them without any conscious thought, typically. They will, for instance, pick up and imitate very subtle social cues. And, for instance, they will feel hostility towards individuals who do not exhibit the same social cues that they are using, and they won't really be able to explain why. While they feel empathy, we have to remember that empathy for people we know and empathy for strangers are two very different things. They occur in different areas of the brain. With sociopaths, on the other hand, the ability to identify emotions is present, the ability to pick up on social cues is present, but empathy is either absent or severely impaired. Without empathy, others cannot be seen as being like ourselves. The sociopath sees himself as the only actual human that exists. Most people will build their relationships on a certain level of reciprocity. For the sociopath, because he does not have empathy and he does not see others as human, as he is, this is impossible. So all relationships with sociopaths are built around the idea of power. If you've ever played Grand Theft Auto, the feelings you've had for the characters in the game is probably what sociopaths experience as feelings for you. To sociopaths, people are things that you use to obtain other things with. Sociopaths typically have a high level of expertise at manipulation. They're very good at identifying emotions in others, at identifying relationships and the subtleties of these relationships. They're very good at understanding the dynamics of social interaction and of social structures and groups, and of exploiting these for their own benefit, usually with no regard for the damage that might cause. Neurotypicals can sometimes be dangerous because most of the time they don't know why they're doing what they do, and often they don't even realize they're doing it. Sociopaths are dangerous because they know exactly what they're doing, but they're indifferent to the consequences of that. Now, for the autistic, we have neither automated emotion recognition or automated social cue recognition. Now, considering how limited the normal neural versions of these skills are, it's really not much of a loss. We will be looking at learning how to do these things with much greater flexibility and precision than what neurotypicals are capable of. Now, until we learn this, our natural inclination to think that people are saying what they mean and are attributing us the same humanity we're attributing them can make the world a baffling and sometimes dangerous place. I hope you'll join me in future episodes where we will decode these secret, unseen patterns of human interaction and go from being baffled by human behavior to understanding neurotypicals better than they understand themselves.